God can speak to us in any way that He chooses fit. And this past week, He just so happened to speak to me using two totally different podcasts. One that I'm pretty sure everyone has been talking about, and one that just happened to show up when I opened YouTube. Both of these podcast episodes spoke to questions that I have been asking, prayers that I have been praying, and thoughts that I have been wrestling with. So if you have just been wrestling with questions of purpose, calling, wondering what all of this is for, and if maybe you've gotten off of track, then I want to share some takeaways from these two episodes, and I pray that it will bless you just as much as it has blessed me. So, the two podcast episodes that I am talking about are, of course, number one, the podcast with Miss Kiki Palmer and Miss Oprah Winfrey herself. And then the second podcast episode that I'm talking about is one that I actually haven't been hearing a lot of people talk about, but one that a lot of people need to watch if they also enjoyed the Oprah Winfrey podcast. And that is the podcast with Rich Wilkerson Jr. and Manny Arango. And before we get into the actual podcast episode, I want to just kind of let you know where my thoughts were before I watched these videos, just in case you might be feeling the same way. So, over the past few months, honestly, probably since the beginning of the year, I have just really been struggling in terms of purpose and just feeling like I'm getting to the end of my 20s and just not exactly being happy with where I am, but not knowing how to get stuck or necessarily even where I want to go. When people ask me, like, well, what is it about your life right now that's making you so unhappy? I don't really have the words to describe it because it's more of a feeling. Like, there has to be more than this. I can't just be settling. Life can't just be, my friends talk about it. Like, life can't just be me getting up and going to this job every day for the rest of my life, right? I cannot do this for the next 40, 50, 60 years. And so I think that there's a part of me that has just been feeling restless. I moved to Dallas almost 2 years ago now, this month in August. And I just think about the joy and the rush that I felt doing something, moving to a city that I know that I was being called to and pulled to. So I think part of the restlessness and the wrestling is that when we are growing up, we always know what's coming next, right? We go from grade to grade, we go from elementary to middle to high school. After high school, we go to college or we get a job or we go to a trade school, whatever the case may be. But eventually, like, life starts to change. Some people get married, some people choose to have kids, some people don't. I have friends who are in long term relationships. I have friends who are in new relationships. I have friends that haven't been in relationships in years. And so there's no one cookie cutter way to live. And as someone who has always been a rule follower, as someone who has always followed the path that was set before me from my parents, I think when you get past a certain age, it's kind of like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do now? Nobody's here to tell me what to do. And I just feel kind of like lost almost. Like, what am I supposed to do? Especially if you're not someone who maybe has like a traditional career path or just knows, like, I want to be a doctor or I want to be a veterinarian or I want to be a lawyer, right? Those people, they have these very specific paths and things that they want to do. And then I feel like there are some of us who are maybe more creative, or just have different dreams or callings or ideas of what God has called us to do. And sometimes when those things don't come to fruition as early or as easy as we hope they would, then it is easy to feel disappointed. It's easy to feel forgotten about, especially when we talk about comparison and just like looking around at everyone else's life and at everyone else's highlight reel. It can be easy to just feel left behind. And so those are just some of the feelings and things that I have been wrestling with and just bringing to God over the past few months. And this past week, He has answered big time with these two podcasts that have shifted my perspective. So we are going to get into 6 takeaways that I have, 3 from each episode. So we're going to start with the podcast by Rich Wilkerson Jr. and Manny Arango. And if you see me looking all over the place, I have notes in my lap and my computer is over here so I can get the titles right. But this was Rich Wilkerson Jr.'s podcast called Mature Me. And I should have known when I saw that title, baby, that this episode was going to get me all the way together. Mature Me podcast, you know? But the title of the actual episode is Why God Hides You Before He Promotes You. Why God hides you before he promotes you. So let's get into my 3 takeaways from this episode in particular. My first takeaway from this episode was that your capacity grows when you are willing to be uncomfortable. Your capacity grows when you are willing to be uncomfortable. Towards the beginning of this podcast, they talk a lot about capacity and about stress. And if you are someone who doesn't like to hear people comment on Gen Z and our work ethic and all the things, I am a zillennial, so I was born in 97, so I'm right on the cusp. But if you are someone who gets offended by that and doesn't like to hear that, then you might want to sit this one out. But in the beginning, they talk a lot about capacity and just this idea that Gen Z or this younger generation, we tend to have lower capacity. And a couple of things that they said is number one, no one gets to their capacity because we're afraid to test it. We are afraid to test the boundaries of our capacity. If we feel ourselves getting overwhelmed, if we feel ourselves, feeling stressed, then we choose to shrink back rather than pushing past that to get to a new point. As I was listening to it, it reminded me of, working out and weightlifting. And while I don't necessarily enjoy weightlifting, I do enjoy Pilates, specifically like more Legree. And one of the things I've learned as I have just been training my body and working out is that I have to push past what I believe my current capacity is. And when I push past that, when I use heavier springs, when I'm willing to go slower in the workouts, when I'm willing to not take a break, even when I want to, my body often surprises me at what it's really capable of. And I think one of the things that the Lord was speaking to me through this episode is that you haven't even had a chance to see your full capacity yet. You haven't even had a chance to see what it looks like for my strength and my power and my gifts to work fully in you, because every time it feels too hard, every time you feel like you're on the brink of your breaking point, you retreat back. And so that's one of the things that I have taken away, and one of the things that I believe that the Lord is just encouraging me and maybe you on, is that we have to be willing to push past what we believe our ceiling is in order to actually get to the next level that we say that we're desiring. Another thing that they said is that the only way to grow your capacity is challenge, and that your comfort zone has everything in it but your calling. If you can't say amen, just say ouch. Okay. Your comfort zone has everything in it except your calling. Your calling is not going to exist inside of your comfort zone. And I think that we know that here, but we don't necessarily sit with it here, right? Because if we read the scriptures, we know that he called people who were outside of their comfort zone, right? We look at Moses, who said, Lord, surely you're not asking me to go speak to no Pharaoh, right? And I can hardly speak. We look at Jeremiah, who talks about being too young. We look at these people who didn't have seemingly what it takes to do what God has called them to do. But when they pushed past that insecurity and they trusted in the Lord that was calling them, they realized that everything that God was calling them to and what he was calling them for existed outside of the comfort zones that they had created in their head. That's another thing. Your comfort zone is created, right? It is created to protect you. The fear and anxiety we feel are only supposed to be alerts. They're only supposed to be reminders that I'm going to the next level, that I am choosing something hard, that I'm choosing to push past what's comfortable, what's easy, what's familiar, right? And so it's an opportunity to have gratitude, to say, thank you, body, thank you, mind, for letting me know that what I'm going to do next is outside of anything that I've done before. And to take that not necessarily as a way to, as a reason to retreat, but as a reason to keep going forward. One of the things that I think has really hindered me, and I think other people that I've talked to, is that a lot of us want confidence before obedience. It's this idea of control and wanting to know that success is going to come before I even try. right? And so a lot of times, because we don't know what's going to work out, because we aren't sure what path to take and what's going to be on the other side of it, we just sit on our hands and knees and pray and wish and scroll, right? And beg God for things to be different, but we aren't showing up in order to make them different. And earlier I was just talking about how I moved to Dallas 2 years ago. And when I look back on just the hurdle that it felt like to move to Dallas, I have videos on my channel vlogging that whole experience where I did not have the money. It didn't make sense. I just left my job. Like, the leap to move to Dallas was literally a faith move. And I could have stayed with what was safe. I could have stayed with what was comfortable. But the things that God has done, the way that He has matured me, the way that He has grown me, the relationships that I have established, all of the things that I have been able to do happened on the other side of something that was uncomfortable and on the other side of something that I didn't even know would work out, right? But I had to understand that, number one, I will always have a home to go back to. And I know that's not the case for everybody, but I just knew if this didn't work out, I could always go back home to Michigan, even though I didn't want to. But more importantly than my earthly parents, I knew that I had a heavenly Father and that He would never leave me nor forsake me. And so, because my trust was in Him, in His ability, not in my own, I was able to take that leap. And so we do that type of thing for jobs or maybe relationships or careers or moves. But I think we really need to do that and look at our lives that way and what it looks like to really live life with the knowledge and the understanding that God is going to take care of us and He will catch us if we leave. The next principle that stood out to me in this video and really, I hate to even say it because, once you say it, God is like, all right, you got it. Now what you going to do with it? But the next principle that stood out to me in this video is that a proper theology of work is equally as important as a proper theology of rest. I know. I love the soft life just as much as anybody else. However, we were created to work. One of the things that they say is that work is not a result of the fall. And I think a lot of times we believe that I have believed that work is a result of the fall, right? We see in Genesis 3 with the curse that God talks about toil being hard and that Adam will have the sweat on his brow, right? We see this idea of work being super hard in the curse. But the truth is, before they ever sinned, God called them to work. He called them to tend the garden, right? Similarly, just as there was work before the fall, there will be work in eternity, right? We are not going to heaven to have our feet kicked up, right? We will go to heaven. We will live in eternity with God. And yes, there will be no sickness or disease or pain, but there will still be work. And so if we cannot work here, what do we think we're going to escape off to in eternity, right? We will have jobs. We will be tending to the new earth, right? And so I think that was a wake up call to me to like, girl, you're trying to escape. You're talking about come Jesus. When Jesus comes, there will still be work to do. And so this was definitely something that was like, okay, I needed to sit with this because I think in an effort to maybe overcorrect some of the things that we've seen in previous generations, just in terms of work and balance and just all of those things. I think the pendulum has swung all the way over here, right? Where we talk about boundaries, we talk about burnout, we talk about these jobs ain't gonna kill us and all these things. And I think that I'm the boundaries person, right? I think boundaries are important. I think defining what work looks like for you in terms of boundaries and what it means to maintain a family and really having those life priorities is super important as well. But also, a theology of work is just as important as a theology of rest, right? God gave us Sabbath in Him. He gave us Sabbath. We see that He rested on the seventh day, but He also worked on those other six, right? And so a theology of work is just as important as a theology of rest. So I think the biggest question for me that I'm sitting with after watching this episode as it relates to this specific point is not necessarily how can I work less, because that is a question that I have asked myself over the past few years, but more importantly, how can I steward my work well? What does it look like to steward my work well and to steward my energy well, right? So that I'm not just working for the sake of amassing things, but I'm working to ultimately please the Lord and to find purpose in the work that I do. The third and final principle that I took from this podcast is steward what you have before asking for more. Steward what you have before asking for more. Now, this really stood out to me because, as a small example, I have been just praying about a new car, right? And one of the things that the Lord reminds me of, and just He's so gentle and kind, but every time I get into my car and maybe there's an old cup or there's trash that I haven't thrown away or it needs to be vacuumed or there's bird poop on there, He's like, take care of the gift of the car that you have now before asking me for something else. And I think that's really what they were getting at in this podcast episode, is to steward but specifically the gifts that God has given us now, whether those gifts are like talents, whether those gifts are people, whether the gifts are opportunities, whether the gifts are relationships. Steward the gifts that you have been given before asking God for more or believing that more is what you need to get to the next level. Oftentimes, it is not more that we need to get to the next level, it's stewardship of what we already have. And I love the way, I think it was Manny that said this. He said, we overestimate what we do with more and underestimate what we can do with what we already have. We overestimate what we can do with more, and we underestimate what we can do with what we already have. The enemy has no new tricks. He did it in the Garden of Eden. He loves to trick us and make us believe that God is withholding something from us, that He is not good, that there's something that He has that we need, that we deserve, and that He is withholding it from us. And so it makes us want to go get these things on our own. But let me tell you that every need that we have, God says He will supply it. And so that is a truth that I have held on to, that if I need it, God is going to supply it. And if He hasn't supplied it, it's because I don't yet need it. And every time I have needed something, God has supplied it. So those are the three principles that I took away from the podcast with Rich Wilkerson Jr. and Manny Arango. I will have it linked down in the description box below. Again, that was your capacity grows when you're willing to be uncomfortable. Develop a theology of work, an accurate theology of work. And lastly, steward what you have before asking for more. So now let's get into the episode that we have all been talking about, this amazing episode with Keke Palmer and Oprah Winfrey. So similar to the capacity point that I mentioned before, one of the things that really stood out to me that Oprah said, and I think that she was referencing a book that she's read, is that a rainbow is on the other side of the cloud. And she was basically just talking about the good that's on the other side of the storm that you're in right now. And I think that that just also pairs so well with the capacity thing, because a lot of times, if we do not have the capacity to weather the storm, we will never see the rainbow, right? And so it really is that capacity. It's that resilience, right? It's the ability to withstand hard things. Like we say it like, I can do hard things, but a lot of us run from hard, right? And I believe that there are things that are on the other side of hard, that there are really good things on the other side of hard that many of us may never experience, God forbid, because we aren't willing to just go through the hard. There are going to be some seasons of life that are just hard. And the truth is that as believers, we are not promised to be exempt from the hard. And if we're honest, if I'm honest, right? Because I can't speak for you, but if I am honest, sometimes I want God to rescue me from the hard. But the truth is, like, one of the things that's coming to mind right now is the 3 Hebrew boys that get thrown into the fire, right? That is hard. Who wants to be burnt up, right? Like that. But I love what they said, that our God will deliver us from this. But even if He does not, we will not serve you. We will not bow down. We will only serve the one true and living God, right? And God doesn't, turn off the oven. He could have done anything, but you know what he does? He gets in the fire with them because that brought glory to him and made the king obey him. A lot of times we want God to fully deliver us from something instead of delivering us through something. And it is when he delivers us through that thing that he most often gets the glory out of our lives. And that's what we were created for, to bring glory to God. So, your rainbow is on the other side of your cloud. There is good on the other side of the hard. And I pray that you will press through enough to see it. The second thing that really stood out to me was that she said, life will give you exactly what you need at the moment that you need it in order to grow you up. And obviously, I don't believe that life is just doing things, but that God is doing things. But one of the things I say is that life is a lot like a board game. If we believe that the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, if we believe that God has plans for us, if we believe that there are good works that God ordained for us since before the creation of the world, then I have to believe that my steps, that my life is already ordered and planned out. And so I am not waiting for God to bring things to me, but I am meeting things that he has already destined for my life, right? And so a lot of times we get stuck on the board at start because we're waiting for all of these things to come to us, but they are instead things that we are supposed to be collecting along the way as we move, right? What if the very things that you believe that you're waiting for are actually waiting on you and you just have to move through life to get them? Right. And so, whatever it is, I just want to encourage you. I'm encouraged right now to keep moving, to not just sit on my hands, to not just give up in the middle. Like I said, give up in the middle of the hard, or give up because, I had to go back to start, or give up because I rolled the dice and I had to take 2 steps back, but to keep playing this game called life, trusting that everything I need, God is going to supply, that he is ordering my steps because I am submitted to him and not leaning on my own understanding. And as I move, the things that he has already destined for me will meet me there. There were things that were destined for me here in Dallas that I received when I moved, right? And so a lot of us need to get up and dust ourselves off and start moving again. The third thing that really stood out to me in the Oprah Winfrey podcast was when she talked about intentionality. And I think this conversation was kind of just around Kiki asking questions just about being so serious. I remember her talking about life just being so serious and purposeful. And sometimes you can kind of lose the joy and the fun of life. And one of the things that Oprah was just talking about was intentionality. Like when she was doing her show, she ended up pulling her people aside and just telling them basically she wanted the show to have intention. She wanted to have conversations that she wanted to have because she really wanted to be bought in to the people that she brought on her show. And one of the things that she says is you really have to ask yourself, is what you want actually what you want, or is it just what you think you want? Right. And so even as it relates to her show, as it relates to work for you and I, is the job that we want, is the career that we have what we really want? Are we having the conversations that we really want? Are we having the friendships that we really want? Are we in the relationship that we really want? Are we are we just doing the things that we really want, or are we doing things that we think we're supposed to do, right? Because they bring in more money, or because it looks good on the internet, right? Are we doing what we really want? Are we doing what God has truly gifted and called us to do? Or are we doing what looks good to other people? And I think that a lot of us, again, I'll speak for me. I think for me, there have been moments where I have felt off track, where I have felt purposeless, where I have felt misaligned because I wasn't aligned with myself and what I really wanted and what God wanted for me. I was more aligned with what I saw on the internet because I was spending so much time scrolling and not enough time truly sitting with myself and the creator, right? The one who created you knows the most about what you desire and what you need. and where you want to go. And so instead of turning to the internet, instead of turning to AI, instead of turning to all of these man made things, why don't we turn to the one who created us in the first place? So, those are the 6 principles that I took away from those 2 podcast episodes. I would love to hear your thoughts below and what you took away if you watched those episodes as well. Ultimately, I want to end with this. I truly believe that God is more interested in expanding our capacity than accelerating our timeline, right? I do not believe that God is going to bring us to places without preparing us to be there. And so if you feel like you are behind, if you feel like you have gotten off track, if you feel lost, confused, unsure, or misaligned, I encourage you to truly sit with your creator and to ask him, what is this season for? What are you trying to teach me right now? How are you trying to expand my capacity? In what ways are you using my relationships, my job, whatever the case may be? How are you using my current situation to expand my capacity so that I can be a better steward of what you have already given me and what you want to give me in the future? I hope that you've enjoyed this video. Like I said, I would love to hear from you. Also, be sure to give this video a like and subscribe if you want more content from a girl who is just in her 20s but loves Jesus and is trying to figure this life thing out. I love you. Jesus loves you so much more, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.